Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome to the latest episode of Games Up Podcast. My name is Cameron McCulloch-Keeble, and you're in for a very different, very short, very easy-going episode this week. We really didn't have a lot of time to record at all, so it's just me. You're stuck with me, I'm afraid. It would be me and Lewis, but I had to head back to Milton Keynes for my lovely little sister's birthday, which was wonderful, but it meant that I couldn't really ask Lewis to stay up as late as I am to get this done. So that's cool, no worries. Just means you're in for a different episode this week. That being said, I do think the episode is a kind of interesting idea, and hopefully it'll help you out a little bit, because Britain is currently gripped by... the weather is beautiful. It's beautiful weather. At the same time, it's hot. And I know a lot of people go, oh, British people saying it's hot. It must be like 20 degrees. But it's so hot. It's finding a building with air conditioning is an absolute godsend, or has been over the last couple of weeks, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get any cooler for a couple of weeks to come. Now, I imagine that you've heard a great deal of people complain about the heat up to this point, whether you watch YouTube a lot, listen to podcasts a lot, or just go out onto the street where people are and have existed within the heat. So what we thought we'd do is something a little bit different. When it snowed earlier this year and the snow disappeared in a couple of days, we thought maybe you want to bring that snow back into your life. So we recommended some ways that you can get some snow through gaming. Well, this week we're going to talk to you about some ways that you can get out of the heat and chill out a little bit. The best ways to use gaming to avoid 2K18's heatwave. Let's go. The first idea that you might want to take up is playing some snowy levels. If you actually sit around in a dark room with some blue lights on and a snowy level, you can chill out more than you might think. If you do those kind of exercises at home, for example, where you breathe and picture snowy scenes, you will find yourself feeling a little bit colder. Not hugely colder, it won't make you, not sweat or be able to fry an egg on your forehead, but it does have a little bit of an effect, and the same thing can be achieved through watching or playing scenes, so perhaps you're looking for something snowy. If you are, then why don't you go to something like a sports game, like one of the Winter Olympics games, or my suggestion would be SSX. SSX is a great game because it's wonderfully snowy, but also you don't get a lot of snowy games, especially not with the kind of imagination and work that went into building the vistas of SSX. And also, if you don't want to play it hardcore, you don't want to go down the giant, fast, tricky sports route, just the combination of cool music, nice mechanics, and easygoing snowboard game, if you want it to be, is actually a pretty chilling thing. So if you're looking for just an easygoing, easy to pick up, cool snow game, I'd recommend SSX all the way home. Alright, a second idea is an underwater level. Now you may be thinking, whoa sir, I want to get out of the heat, not destroy my controller in a fit of rage. I hear you. But there are some underwater levels that actually haven't aged as badly as you might think, and with underwater physics changing quite a lot over the past couple of years, they are coming back, and they are kind of getting better. So, here are a couple of my suggestions. If you own an Xbox One, you can go to Rare Replay, which has a bunch of some old stuff, including the Banjo-Kazooie games, which had a number of underwater segments. Now, I will say, the underwater segments in Banjo have not aged well. They've really not aged well. But they are playable, for sure, and they're pretty picturesque, all things considered. They haven't really been up-resed, it's not a remaster or anything like that, it's just the old blocky game, and they don't look anywhere near as bad as I thought they would. They do, as I say, play pretty badly, but they are underwater. For another example, you could look at Assassin's Creed Origins, whose underwater stuff was just beautiful. The amount of detail put into the water around Egypt and Siwa is stunning. There's so much life and stuff to see in the water. If you want to be surrounded by the blue ocean in this time of heat, then Siwa and Egypt and Bayek are a pretty good way to do it. And if you want just a classic game with some great water, you can't really go wrong with GTA 5. Although in GTA 5 you are liable to be just murdered at all points, whether you're online or in the story mode. So not quite as chill as the other two. You'll get murdered in Assassin's Creed as well, but sort of GTA's rampant with it. All good ways to get underwater in games, though. Another opportunity is maybe you don't want a hardcore game at all. Maybe you just want something cool, something chill, something really easy to play that you barely have to put effort into, that you can just focus on and relax. Well, then maybe the best thing for you would be a walking simulator, or as I like to call them, a modern day, I guess, point and click kind of game. There's a number of games that may fit the bill. I'll always trumpet for Gone Home, which I think might actually work really well in the current summer heat. It's set in the late 80s in the middle of a storm in the middle of the night, so the dark visuals, the sound of the rain, the empty house, it's pretty chilling, both in a, oh, that's kind of unpleasant and creepy way, and also in a, this feels very cold way, so that might help. But then there's some others as well. Perhaps you'd like to embrace the heat a little bit and play Firewatch, which can be played on a number of platforms, but is based in a forest and has this really kind of gorgeous, orangey, warm, almost sepia at times art direction. That's a very chill game as well, with quite a heavy, interesting story. So minimal input effort from you, maximum story and gameplay output. And then perhaps you want a kind of combination of all of this. Well, then my suggestion to you would be a classic 3D platformer. Perhaps you want to go back with your old Nintendo consoles, or perhaps an emulator if you choose to do that, to Mario 64. But something that combines all of this really nicely is Crash, which came out just last week. It's got pretty good underwater levels, and actually they've done some work to make them age far better than they really should have. It's got some nice snowy levels. There's some fairly easy levels that you can walk through, probably more towards the end of the third game rather than the first one, because that's a hard game. Yeah, you could. Crash is a pretty good way to combine all of these things. You want underwater? It's got underwater. You want chill level design? It's got pretty chill level design. You want some cool, icy, snowy levels, maybe even with an adorable polar bear? It's got all that stuff with an adorable polar bear. And then maybe on the flip side, you don't want any of this. Maybe you don't want to chill out at all. Maybe you don't want to be cold. Maybe you're loving this heat wave that we've got. Maybe you want to embrace it. Well, go and get out. There are some ways that gaming can really help you socialise as well, and I'm going to suggest a couple of things. Now, the first one is me, so you will roll your eyes at, I guarantee you, but there has never been a better time to get into Pokemon Go, and there are so many people playing it now. You really, really should give it a try. I know I've drowned on about this, so I won't do too much more, but it really is worth your time, especially with the amount of people that you'll meet through it. It's one of the most fulfilling games you can get. But if that's not your style, that's cool. Might I suggest to you instead that if you have a console or a laptop, specifically a Switch or a laptop, download a thing called the Jackbox Pack. Get your friends together out in a shady bit of the heat with your phones and play a game perhaps of Drawful. It's basically a video game version of Pictionary with a little bit more room for innuendo. It's a really, really fun game that's great to play with friends. It's a great little crowd game. And if people come along and say, hey, what's that you're doing? You can invite them to play the game as well. They don't have to play with you. They can watch it and kind of play from the sidelines, but it can be a really, really big social crowd game. So if you want to get out in the heat and do more with it, that's a perfect way to do it. All right, as I said, smaller episode today because it's so late. I can't even explain to you how late it is. But yeah, these are some ways that you can use the heat to your advantage, or totally get out of the heat wave in the minute with some games and some cool gaming ideas. Thanks very much for listening. Sorry, it's a kind of, to be honest, it's a bit of a lazy episode. Sorry, hope you're kind of humorous this week and all the other weeks that we do them as well. But I hope you found it enjoyable, and I don't know, maybe it's inspired you to play SSX or something, which would be really cool. It's a good game. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you next week, and until then, the game is boiling hot. The game is just, the game is sat in an air conditioning room in front of a fan with ice all over its clothes. It's up. The game's up.